What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion dollars, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person.
Okay, so something really concerning is happening with Trump right now, and people are starting to notice. In the last few weeks, there have been multiple incidents where Trump appears to freeze mid-sentence during speeches, lose his train of thought, stare blankly into space, and just stop talking. And we're not talking about quick pauses. We're talking about 30 plus seconds of dead silence where he's just standing there, music playing, crowd waiting, and Trump looking like he forgot where he is or what he was saying. And the videos are everywhere. Social media is blowing up with clips of Trump buffering mid-speech, stumbling over foreign leaders' names, speaking in past tense about his presidency like he forgot he's currently president. And while Trump and his team are saying these are just dramatic pauses or teleprompter issues, a lot of people, including some Republicans, are asking, is Trump okay? Is this cognitive decline? Is the 79-year-old president mentally fit to do this job?
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
So let's talk about what's actually on video, because this isn't speculation. This is documented. In late January, Trump was giving a rally speech, and right in the middle of talking, he just stopped for 35 seconds. That's a long time. Count it out in your head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, all the way to 35. That's how long Trump stood there, silent, staring into the crowd, while campaign music played in the background, and people in the audience are looking at each other like, what's happening? Is he okay? Is this part of the speech? And Trump just stands there, blank expression, not moving, not talking, for over half a minute. And when the clip went viral, when people started asking what happened, Trump jumped on Truth Social and said it was a standard dramatic pause. He said he was being deliberate, that he was letting the moment breathe, and that his opponents were spreading freeze rumors to make him look bad. But here's the thing. Dramatic pauses don't last 35 seconds. Dramatic pauses are like 3 seconds, 5 seconds. You let a line land, and then you keep going. You don't stand there in complete silence for over half a minute while your crowd gets uncomfortable. That's not a dramatic pause. That's something else. And it's not an isolated incident. In a late 2025 speech in South Korea, Trump tried to say the word Azerbaijan, and he just couldn't. He stumbled over it, paused awkwardly, and then instead of just moving on, he launched into this completely confusing story about ending a 38-year war that had nothing to do with what he was talking about before. And commentators watching live were saying, he's buffering, he forgot what he was supposed to say, so he's just filling time with random stories, hoping he remembers. And he had a teleprompter right in front of him, so it's not like he didn't have the words written down. He just couldn't get them out or couldn't process them or lost his place and couldn't recover. And then there's the Davos speech in January 2026. Trump's speaking at this big international forum, and he starts talking about his presidency in the past tense. Like, when I was president, not as president, but when I was. And reporters and aides who were there immediately flagged it as a worrying moment. Because Trump is currently president. He didn't used to be president. He is president right now. So why is he talking about it like it's over? Did he forget? Did he get confused about where he is in time? And his team tried to spin it as just a verbal slip. Everyone makes mistakes. But combined with all the other freeze moments and stumbles and blank stares, it starts to look like a pattern. and people are noticing. Opinion channels, political commentators, even some psychologists are compiling these clips and saying, look, we can't diagnose him from a distance. We're not his doctors. But this behavior is concerning. The freezing, the forgetting, the rambling tangents, the inability to finish sentences, the speaking in past tense about things that are happening now. All of that could be signs of cognitive decline. And Trump's 79 years old. That's old. That's an age where cognitive issues become more common. And if he's showing symptoms, if he's struggling on camera in front of millions of people, what's happening behind closed doors? What's happening in classified briefings or high-stakes negotiations when the cameras aren't rolling? And here's the irony. Trump spent years attacking Biden's mental fitness. He called Biden senile, said he couldn't finish sentences, made fun of him for pausing or stumbling over words. And now, Trump's doing the exact same things, and the videos are being used against him the same way he used them against Biden. Slowed down clips, compilations of freeze moments, commentary about cognitive decline. It's the exact playbook Trump used, except now he's the target, and Trump supporters are defending him, saying these are just normal pauses. Everyone slips up sometimes. He's under constant scrutiny, so of course people are going to find moments where he looks bad. And sure, that's partly true. But 35 seconds of silence isn't a normal pause. Forgetting you're currently president isn't a normal slip. Buffering mid-sentence when you're reading from a teleprompter isn't normal. These are concerning moments, and they're happening more and more frequently. So we need to break down exactly what's in these videos, what cognitive decline actually looks like, and whether Trump is showing real symptoms or whether this is just political opponents weaponizing isolated moments to make him look worse than he is. All right, so let's dig into what cognitive decline actually looks like, because that's important context for understanding whether Trump's freeze moments are concerning or just normal aging. And I want to be clear up front, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose anyone, and neither can anyone else who's just watching videos online, but we can look at what medical professionals say are warning signs of cognitive issues, and we can compare those to what we're seeing from Trump. So cognitive decline, which includes conditions like dementia and Alzheimer's, typically shows up in a few key ways. 1. Memory problems, forgetting recent events, repeating questions or stories, losing track of where you are or what day it is. 2. Trouble finding words or finishing thoughts. You start a sentence and then just can't remember where you were going with it. 3. Confusion about time or place, like talking about the past as if it's the present or vice versa. 4. Difficulty with complex tasks. Things that used to be easy become hard. And 5. Changes in judgment or decision making, doing things that are uncharacteristic or risky. Now, do Trump's freeze moments match those symptoms? Let's go through them. The 35-second pause, that could be a word-finding issue, where he was trying to remember what comes next and just couldn't. So he stood there silent until either it came back to him or he decided to move on. The buffering in South Korea, same thing. He was trying to say Azerbaijan, couldn't get it out, and then his brain just skipped to a different story because he couldn't recover the original thread, the Davos speech where he talked about his presidency in past tense. That's confusion about time, forgetting that he's currently president and talking about it like it's over. So yeah, if you line up the symptoms of cognitive decline with what we're seeing from Trump, there are some matches. But, and this is important, those symptoms are also consistent with just normal aging. Everyone forgets words sometimes. Everyone loses their train of thought. Everyone has moments where they're tired or distracted and they don't communicate as clearly as they usually do. So the question isn't, does Trump show any symptoms? The question is, are these symptoms happening more often? Are they getting worse? Are they severe enough to interfere with his ability to do his job? And that's where it gets tricky, because we don't have access to Trump's medical records. We don't have neurologists examining him. We just have these public moments captured on video. So we can't know for sure whether what we're seeing is early stage cognitive decline or just an older guy having a bad day. But what we can say is the frequency of these moments is increasing. There are more freeze clips now than there were a year ago. Trump's rambling, which has always been part of his style, seems to be getting more incoherent. His inability to stay on topic, to finish thoughts, to remember basic facts, that seems to be getting worse. And Trump's age is a factor here. He's 79, that's old. And the risk of cognitive decline increases significantly after 75. So statistically, Trump is in the age range where these issues become more common. And if he's showing symptoms publicly, that's concerning, because public speaking is something Trump's done his whole life. He's been giving speeches for decades. He's usually pretty good at it, even if his style is unconventional. So if he's now struggling with basic things like finishing sentences, remembering names, staying on topic, that suggests something has changed. And the most likely explanation for that change, given his age, is cognitive decline. But Trump's team is fighting back hard on this narrative. They're saying these are isolated moments taken out of context. They're saying Trump's sharper than ever, that he aced his cognitive test during his first term, that he's working longer hours than any other president. And they're pointing to moments where Trump is coherent, where he gives long interviews or speeches without major issues, and saying, see, he's fine. The freeze moments are just his opponents cherry-picking bad clips to make him look bad. And there's some truth to that. Trump does have good moments. He does give speeches where he doesn't freeze or stumble. So it's not like he's completely incapacitated. But the existence of good moments doesn't erase the bad moments. And the bad moments are happening often enough that they're noticeable. If Trump froze once, okay, everyone has off days. But multiple times, in multiple contexts, that's a pattern, and patterns are concerning. And here's the political angle. Because this isn't just about Trump's health, it's about how this plays in the 2026 midterms and beyond. Trump spent years attacking Biden's mental fitness. He made it a central part of his campaign. He ran ads showing Biden pausing or stumbling. He nicknamed him Sleepy Joe. He said Biden was senile and unfit for office. And a lot of voters believed that. They voted for Trump partly because they thought Biden was too old and too confused to be president. But now Trump's the one showing signs of cognitive issues, and Democrats are using his own playbook against him. They're running clips of Trump freezing. They're talking about his age. They're questioning his mental fitness, and that's politically devastating for Trump because he built his brand on being sharp, being tough, being in control. So when voters see him standing silent for 35 seconds, or forgetting he's president, or buffering mid-sentence, that undermines his entire image. And Republicans are stuck, because if they acknowledge that Trump might have cognitive issues, that opens the door to questions about whether he should be president, whether they should invoke the 25th Amendment, whether they should be pushing him to step aside. But if they defend him, if they say he's totally fine, then they look like they're covering for him, and voters might not believe them. So most Republicans are just avoiding the question. They're not talking about it. They're hoping it goes away. But it's not going away. The clips keep coming. The freeze moments keep happening. And the longer Republicans stay silent, the more it looks like they know there's a problem, but they're too scared to admit it. And there's this broader conversation happening about age and cognitive testing for presidents. Some people are saying, okay, if we're worried about Trump's age and Biden's age and all these old politicians, maybe we should have mandatory cognitive testing for anyone over 75 who wants to be president. Make it part of the campaign. Release the results publicly. Let voters decide if they're comfortable with an older candidate based on objective medical data instead of just viral clips and speculation. And that's not a terrible idea, but it's also politically impossible right now because neither party wants to set that precedent when they've both got older candidates. Democrats don't want to push for cognitive testing because that would have hurt Biden when he was running. Republicans don't want it because it would hurt Trump now. So instead, we're stuck in this place where everyone just weaponizes clips of their opponents looking confused, and nobody wants to have an honest conversation about whether these people are actually fit to serve. But the clips are powerful because when you watch Trump freeze for 35 seconds, You don't need a medical degree to see that something's wrong. You don't need a neurologist to tell you that a healthy 79-year-old should be able to finish a sentence without buffering for half a minute. And voters are watching these clips and they're forming opinions, and those opinions are going to affect how they vote. And here's the thing that makes this even more complicated. Trump has always had an unusual speaking style. He rambles, he goes off on tangents, he repeats himself, he makes up words. So some of what we're seeing now isn't new. It's just Trump being Trump. But the difference is, before, those tangents usually came back around to a point. He'd ramble for a bit, but then he'd tie it back to what he was talking about. Now he rambles and then just stops. Or he starts a story and never finishes it. Or he forgets what he was saying entirely and moves on to something else. So it's not just that his style is unusual, it's that his style is getting worse, more incoherent, harder to follow. And that matters for governance, because if Trump can't finish a thought during a speech, can he finish a thought during a classified briefing? If he forgets he's president during a public appearance, what's he forgetting in private meetings? If he buffers mid-sentence when he's reading from a teleprompter, how's he handling complex negotiations with world leaders? These are real questions with real implications for national security and foreign policy and domestic governance. And Trump's defenders will say, he's still getting stuff done, he's still signing executive orders, he's still making decisions. And that's true, but making decisions doesn't mean making good decisions. And if Trump's cognitive abilities are declining, that affects the quality of those decisions, it affects his judgment, it affects his ability to process information and weigh options and understand consequences. So even if he's still functioning, the question is he functioning at the level required to be president? And we don't have a good answer to that because, again, we don't have access to his medical records. We don't have neurologists examining him. We just have these public moments that raise questions. But the questions are real and they're not going away. And the more freeze moments we see, the more people are going to demand answers. And if Trump and his team keep just dismissing the concerns and attacking anyone who raises them, that's only going to make people more suspicious that there's something to hide. So where does this go? Well, either Trump's cognitive issues are real and they're going to get worse, in which case we're headed for a serious constitutional crisis where the president is clearly unfit, but nobody wants to do anything about it. Or the freeze moments are being overblown and Trump's actually fine, in which case he needs to prove it by releasing detailed medical records and cognitive test results and putting the concerns to rest. But as long as we're in this middle ground, where there are concerning clips but no definitive answers, the speculation is just going to continue. And that's bad for Trump, bad for Republicans, and honestly, bad for the country. Because we need a president who's fully capable of doing the job, and right now, it's not clear that we have that. Okay, so let's bring this all together and talk about what this actually means going forward, because the cognitive fitness question isn't just about Trump, it's about how we handle aging leaders in general, and whether we're willing to have honest conversations about mental decline, or whether we're just going to keep weaponizing it for political points while ignoring the actual problem. First, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Trump is showing signs that are consistent with cognitive decline, the freezing, the word finding issues, the confusion about time, the inability to finish thoughts. All of that matches what doctors describe as early warning signs. No. Does that mean Trump definitely has dementia or Alzheimer's? No. We can't diagnose that from videos, but it means there's enough there to be concerned, and concern is valid. When the President of the United States is showing these symptoms publicly, we should be asking questions. We should be demanding transparency. We should be insisting on medical evaluations. But we're not doing that. Instead, we're doing what we always do in American politics, which is turning everything into a partisan fight. Democrats are using the freeze clips to attack Trump. Republicans are defending him and attacking Democrats for bringing it up. And nobody's actually addressing the core question, which is the president mentally fit to do his job? Because that question shouldn't be partisan. It should be objective. It should be about facts and medical evidence, not about which team you're on. And the problem is, we don't have a good system for dealing with this. The 25th Amendment exists. which allows the vice president and cabinet to remove a president who's unable to discharge his duties. But invoking that requires political will. And Trump's cabinet is full of loyalists who aren't going to turn on him even if he's clearly declining. So the 25th Amendment, while it exists on paper, is basically useless in practice unless the president is literally in a coma or completely incapacitated. So what else is there? Impeachment, that's even more political and even less likely to succeed. Elections, sure, voters can decide not to re-elect Trump if they think he's unfit, but that's years away. And in the meantime, we're stuck with a president who might be experiencing cognitive decline. So there's really no good mechanism for addressing this, which is why the issue just lingers with everyone arguing about it, but nobody able to actually do anything. And that's deeply concerning because if Trump is declining, if his cognitive abilities are deteriorating, that has real world consequences. Who's actually making decisions? Is it Trump or is it his advisors and staff? And if it's his staff, how do we hold them accountable? They weren't elected. They can be fired at any time. So we could have a situation where the president is essentially a figurehead and unelected staffers are running the country. And there's no mechanism for voters to do anything about it until the next election. And this isn't just about Trump. This is about the broader problem of aging leadership in America. We have a gerontocracy. Our leaders are old, really old. The average age in Congress is like 60. The Senate is even older, and we keep electing people in their 70s and 80s to the highest offices in the country. And while age doesn't automatically mean cognitive decline, it increases the risk, and we're seeing that play out with multiple leaders, not just Trump, showing signs of mental slowing. But we can't have an honest conversation about it because it's politically toxic. If you suggest that maybe we should have age limits or cognitive testing for elected officials, you get accused of ageism. You get attacked for discriminating against older people. But we have minimum age requirements for president. You have to be at least 35. So we've already decided that age matters for this job. Why is it ageist to suggest there should also be a maximum age or at least medical evaluations to ensure cognitive fitness? And the answer is because the people making those rules are old themselves. They don't want age limits because they'd be affected. They don't want cognitive testing because they might not pass. So they keep the system as it is, where we just hope our leaders are mentally sharp. And if they're not, we argue about it on social media, but never actually do anything. And voters are stuck. Because in a two-party system, you often have to choose between two candidates you're not thrilled about. And if one of them is showing signs of cognitive decline, but you agree with their policies more than the other candidate, what do? Do you vote for someone you think might be mentally unfit because you prefer their platform? Or do you vote for someone whose policies you disagree with because at least they seem cognitively sharp? That's not a good choice. That's a failure of the system. And the media isn't helping because covering cognitive decline is hard. It's nuanced. It requires medical expertise. And most journalists don't have that expertise. So instead, we get surface level coverage. We get clips of freeze moments without context. We get speculation from pundits who aren't doctors. We get partisan talking points instead of actual analysis. And that doesn't help voters make informed decisions. It just adds to the noise. So what should be happening? Well, ideally, Trump should be transparent about his health. He should release detailed medical records. He should undergo cognitive testing by independent neurologists. He should allow the results to be made public so voters can make informed judgments. But he's not going to do that because if the results are bad, that destroys his presidency. And if the results are good, his opponents will just claim they're fake or that the doctors were biased. So there's no political upside to transparency, which means we're not going to get it. And Congress should step in. They should demand medical evaluations for the president. They should hold hearings. They should bring in experts to testify about what cognitive decline looks like and whether Trump's behavior is concerning. But they're not going to do that either because Republicans control the House and they're not going to investigate their own president. And Democrats can demand all they want. But without subpoena power, they can't force anything, so we're stuck. We've got a president who's showing concerning signs of cognitive decline, no good mechanism for addressing it, no political will to be transparent about it, and no way for voters to get reliable information about it, and that's a disaster because democracy requires informed voters. And if voters can't get accurate information about whether the president is mentally fit, how can they make good decisions at the ballot box? And the freeze clips are going to keep coming. Every time Trump gives a speech, every time he does an interview, people are going to be watching for moments where he stumbles or pauses or forgets something. And those moments are going to be clipped and shared and analyzed and weaponized. And Trump's going to keep dismissing them as fake news or dramatic pauses. And Republicans are going to keep defending him. And Democrats are going to keep attacking him. And nothing's going to change. But the underlying question remains, is Trump cognitively fit to be president? And if he's not, what do we do about it? Because the answer to that question matters. It matters for national security. It matters for domestic policy. It matters for America's standing in the world. And it matters for whether we can trust that the person making life and death decisions on behalf of 330 million people is actually capable of making those decisions. And I don't have a good answer. I can't tell you whether Trump is experiencing cognitive decline or whether these are just normal age-related changes. I can't tell you whether he's fit for office or whether he should step down. What I can tell you is the clips are concerning, the frequency is increasing, and the lack of transparency is troubling. And voters deserve better than to just guess about whether their president is mentally competent. So here's what needs to happen. 1, we need mandatory cognitive testing for all elected officials over a certain age. Make it part of the job. Release the results publicly. Let voters decide if they're comfortable with a candidate based on objective data. 2, we need better mechanisms for removing a president who's unfit. The 25th Amendment isn't working. We need something more robust that doesn't require the cabinet to turn on their own boss. 3, we need media outlets to cover this responsibly, not just showing freeze clips for clicks, but actually bringing in medical experts, providing context, helping voters understand what they're seeing. And 4, we need to stop making this partisan. Trump's cognitive fitness shouldn't be a Republican versus Democrat issue. It should be an American issue because we all have a stake in whether the president is capable of doing the job. And if he's not, we all suffer the consequences, regardless of party.